Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I am back with my weekly wrap up. I am so excited because this week went much better for me. I had such high quality reads. I have 2 6 stars to talk about, which I am so excited. This month is just going so much better for me than I felt like January did for some reason. So anyways, I have 7 books, so let's go ahead and dive into my weekly reads. Okay guys, so before I get started, I do have to bring up a TNF that I forgot to talk about last week. So I do want to briefly go over that. Hopefully it's briefly, because I did end up getting like, I think 49-50% through it. So I got a heavy chunk through that book, but I just couldn't hack it. Unfortunately, it was an arc as well. So like, I usually am pretty good. Like I've forced myself to get through arcs before, but I'm not doing that anymore, and I'm not going to be as like nice on arcs. I tend to be a little bit nicer, but like this book was just not going to work for me, and I knew if I forced myself to read it, it'd be like a 1 star. So that's not good for the author either. So I just basically decided to DNF it. And it kind of surprised me too, because this was What's Left of Us by Celeste. And this was a very different type of book than what I'm used to reading by Celeste. She usually writes kind of like some taboo, age gap, really sometimes emotional type of books. And this one, I just didn't like the characters. I hated the hero, and I didn't really understand what she was trying to do with this book. Now, I was really interested in it because it did say it was going to have mafia ties and that kind of stuff, and it does, but not in the way that I actually enjoyed, really. And in this, it was kind of promoted as like a detective that married like a mafia guy's daughter to help her, and then like their marriage falls apart, and then like now he's going to therapy and gonna work on his like faults and like his marriage, and then it's gonna be kind of like a second chance thing. And it did not read like that at all. It was horrible. Like, I honestly didn't like the hero from the first chapter. The first chapter, you're gonna have like current timeline and then flashbacks to how him and his wife met and like what happened with them. And even though he did a good thing in the flashbacks by marrying her, because he did it to help her, he was still a scumbag through 50% of this book, where I had like no interest in this hero. And I wanted to DNF it almost from like the first paragraph, but first chapter, but I wanted to give him a chance to see like, okay, maybe I might warm up to him, or he'll have a redemption. And I didn't like him all the way up to the 49% mark. So in the beginning, it literally kicks off with this really aggressive, kind of abusive sex scene where his ex-wife shows up, and he kind of like talks about her being like a temptress and a seductress and like a user of men. Like, that's how he's describing her. And he screws her really roughly, BDSM, like impact play, but like really roughly, degrading her. Then he like doesn't get her off and like kicks her out of his place. And it was just disgusting to me. And he didn't improve the entire book. Like, he kept using her in the current timeline of like just showing up and wanting her for sex, but then treating her bad, and then like blaming her for them not being together. And so I thought he was going to be going to therapy because he is a detective. His best friend and partner got killed in a shooting that he feels responsible for. And he blames the heroine for it too, which is stupid. But he ended up getting badly injured in that shooting, and so he hasn't been able to do his regular duties, and he has to do a lot of physical therapy and also go to a therapist before he can go back full time. And so I thought he was going to be going to his therapist, working on like really talking about him and his wife and just like searching his feelings and realizing what he did wrong. And he doesn't do that at all. Like, most of this book, he's literally like flirting with the therapist, talking about still screwing his ex-wife, but also wanting to hook up with the therapist. He like runs in with her at the grocery store and is like flirting with her. And I'm like, what is this? I thought this was going to be like a second chance for the wife. and it's mostly focused on this therapist in the current timeline, and he's really still like not working on what he did with his ex. And what had ended up happening was, I'm not going to go too deep into it, I already talked about this too much, but he was like, had a one night stand with the heroine when she isn't the daughter of a mafia don, but like he obviously has some ties to some mafia, and he's powerful, and he wants her in an arranged marriage that she really doesn't want to be a part of. And so she kind of goes out, loses her virginity, thinking that will stop this, and really like her dad disowns her, kicks her out, and she has nowhere to go. So she ends up running into him again, and he offers his place up, which is kind of weird. And then he eventually offers up like, hey, let's get married and have an arranged marriage so he could save her from this marriage. So even though he did a good thing, like he still treated her like crap, and he basically used her for sex in all the flashbacks. He was pretty brutal to her, and he's horrible to her in the current timeline. So I ended up DNFing it. I did see somebody's spoiler review, and they went on a rant about this, and it got even worse. And so I decided this book is not for me, and so I DNF'd it. But anyway, so that was last week, and I just forgot to bring that up. So I wanted to mention that because I definitely don't recommend this book. I do like Be Celeste, but like this one was just, it was no for me. It was a big no. So anyways, on to this week's reading. So the first book that I read was an ARC, and this was Captivating by Bella Matthews. This is the fourth book in the Red Lips and White Lies series. I've really loved this second generation Bella Matthews. She really writes like cute found family, these big interconnected families, and like the sports world. I really like them. They're kind of like easy, fun romances. And this one is between Killian and Lila. And Lila is like, was giving me major like Taylor Swift vibes. She's basically like a huge pop star. She comes from a very famous family. You know, they're all in sports and different things. And she is coming back home to Croydon Hills because she had like a bomb scare on tour. There was a bomb at her like dressing room, I believe. And she doesn't know that she also has a stalker. She just thinks this is like a one-off situation, but her like people, you know, agents and like everybody is kind of hiding the fact that she's had a stalker sending her like these kind of threatening and creepy letters and stuff. And so they want her to have more security, and she's going home to kind of take a break because they had to put a pause on the tour. And so she's back home, and she's kind of fighting the whole protection thing, which always irritates me when it's like you're obviously in danger. But she doesn't know the full extent of the stalker situation. Her twin brother knows, and he actually goes to Killian for help because he wants somebody to be living with her, like that can protect her. Killian is a family friend. He used to be her like childhood like best friend that she was like, they were very pining after each other. They were going to become lovers, but she was just starting her career. And then things go sideways, and they are like basically enemies now. She hates him, and she wants something to do with him. It's been like 10 years of her like basically hating him. And he's an MMA fighter, and, you know, so they want him to kind of fake date, live with her to kind of protect her. And so she ends up agreeing to this because her people are like really forcing this issue if she wants to go back on tour again. So they end up getting into this arrangement where they're going to live together, and it's like very, you know, enemies to lovers type of thing. But honestly, like, there's just a lot of miscommunication, and that's where my frustration came into this, because when you find out why she hates him, and she misread the situation, jumped to conclusions, and then held on to this grudge and always throws it in his face for like 10 years without ever really talking things out with him. So that really annoyed me. But I did really understand because they were like 16, 17, so you're not really at the best thing at that period of your life, but I do think she should have kind of actually communicated with him. So that kind of brought this down a little bit for me, but I still really enjoyed it because Killian was very swoon-worthy. Bella Matthews writes really swoon-worthy heroes, and he's very protective of her. And then once they finally, now that they're living in this forced situation together. They actually have to talk about their issues and their past and everything that happened. And so, yeah, so I enjoyed it. It just isn't my favorite in this series. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars and then 2.5 chilies. I will bring up some trigger warnings that may spoil things for you, but there is a previous attempted SA, and then there is a early term pregnancy loss. So anyways, it was good. So then I went on to a couple books I have here from this week that are going to be my Immortals After Dark read along that I'm doing. I'm not going to fully go as into depth here because I want you guys to watch my live show. If you missed my first live show, please make sure you watch it. I will try to remember to link it down below or put it up in the cards. But I had a really great time with Kim and we discussed the first couple, which was like the first prequel kind of novella, and then A Hunger Like No Other. So now I read No Rest for the Wicked, and this is the second book in the Immortals After Dark series. Technically, that first prequel was a 0.5. So, and this one was between Sebastian Roth, who is a vampire, and Katerin, and she is a Valkyrie. And Katerin is actually called Katerin the Cold-Hearted because she's completely shut off her emotions. She's like a ruthless Valkyrie assassin. She hates vampires because they're responsible for her losing her like sisters. And so she's completely shut off her emotions and like it kills all vampires. And so this kind of kicks off where she goes to kill Sebastian, and Sebastian was actually forced into being a vampire. He didn't want to turn, but his brother, who is in the prequel, actually turned him because he was at death's door, and he kind of forced him to become a vampire. So he's kind of been living in a miserable existence, not wanting to be a vampire, be alive, kind of suffering. And so he's kind of just like ready for her to kill him when she shows up, but she hesitates and she doesn't know why she's hesitating, and either does he. And then all of a sudden the blooding happens, which is what happens to a vampire when they meet their mate, and his heart starts beating. He's breathing in air for the first time, and he's kind of confused about what's going on because he's been really checked out from the whole world and everything, kind of living like a recluse. But Katerin knows what's happening, and she's like, F no, I am not freaking mates with a vampire. And so she spares his life, but she basically leaves. She is actually part of this competition called The High, I think it was. What was it called? I can't remember the full name, but it's kind of like a Mortals After Dark Amazing Race type of competition. And she wins like every year. It's pretty ruthless. And she wants to win big time this year because the prize is basically like these keys to be able to go back into the past. And she wants to go back into the past so that she can save her sisters. So she wants to win this badly. But Sebastian shows up. Here I said I was going to go into it, but I'm talking a lot about it. But anyways, still watch the live show. Sebastian ends up showing up. He is able to, I can't remember if it's called trace or what it is, where they can like show up, like he can teleport almost, you know, like a vampire type of thing. I'm like all over the place, sorry. He's able to do it right to her location, and usually you're not able to do that. You can only do it if you've been to a place and you know that place and where you're going, and he just literally does it to Katerin, so he's able to find where this location is, where the competition's going to kick off, and so he joins it. And so he's kind of forcing himself into the situation so that he can win her over and get his mate. So I enjoyed this one. I ended up listening to this on audiobook because I was worried I wasn't going to really enjoy the heroine that much, because the Valkyries aren't really my favorite. I think they're kind of written as like a little bit too much of like the over-the-top badass heroine type of chick, and I get kind of bored with that a little bit. And so, and I don't like how they like fight the mating for so long. And so I was kind of worried it would be drag for me. So I really did enjoy the audiobook. Definitely recommend it. I flew through it and I did enjoy this. But it was tough because Katerin like really fought things for so long, and I understood her reasoning, but it was frustrating because Sebastian is such a cinnamon roll hero that is like so adorable and sweet, and you just want the best for him. So he kind of saved this a little bit more for me too. So I did end up enjoying this. I don't think I'm fully going to give my rating here because I'm going to want you to watch the live show, but I did enjoy this one. I didn't enjoy it as much as Hunger Like No Other, but like I think I ended up rating it kind of the same. So that's kind of weird, but did enjoy it, and I'm happy to be doing this read along. So then I listened to Asking for Trouble by Giana Darling. This is actually a reread for me because I'm on her ARC and ALC team. And so she offered up the ALC for this, and I definitely wanted to listen to it. I really loved this book. This is the 8th book in the Fallen Men series. I loved it the first time around, and I still loved it. This audiobook was narrated by Gregory Salinas and Lee Daniels, and they did a fantastic job. This is about Aaron, or Boner. I have a hard time calling him Boner, though. Like, he obviously, you know, he's got a great package going on, or whatever you want to call it. He's got it going because that's his nickname. But Blue is like a curvy heroine. She's got her blue hair. She's really struggled. She's come from a pretty bad life because she was in a different MC, and it was a very abusive situation. She was like forced into a marriage. There's just a bad situation, and she kind of ran away from that. And in the beginning of this, she's working like the late night shift at a convenient, like at the AM, like an AM PM whatever type of store, and Boner shows up, and she's immediately like there, smitten, kind of like feeling each other. And then he goes in the back, and these other guys come, and they have gun on her, and they're trying to rob her, and Boner beats the shit out of them, and they go running, and they had like slashed his tires, and so they have to take their van, and then they end up getting kind of in this situation where they realize there's all these stolen goods in the back, like jewelry and everything, and she realizes it's her ex and that they were after her, and really it's her dad is after her and wants her back. And so now Aaron is involved, and he is into her, and he wants to protect her, so he brings her back to his fallen MC. And you know, a lot goes on in this. They do get split up for a while because of the situation, but like it is very insta love, but I really loved it. Like, I loved their connection, and there was a lot more emotional stuff in this that Blue goes through, and it's pretty tough. But it was very fast paced. I love the audiobook, so I definitely recommend it. If you haven't read the Fallen Men MC series, I highly recommend it. It's what got me into reading Giana Darling, and I really love the MC series. But I don't really mind the MC lingo. Like, some people don't like it, so they will have a hard time with this. But I really enjoyed this. I thought it was fantastic. So I still gave it 5 stars, and then it is 3 chilies. Okay, so then I went on to Immortals After Dark again, and I read the 3rd book, which is Wicked Deeds on a Winter's Night. And this one I was really looking forward to because we are introduced to Bowen in the last 2 books. So even in The Hunger Like No Other, we're introduced to him. He's a Lycae. He's the cousin of the hero from that book. I think it was Lachlan. And he's really been struggling for hundreds of years. I think he's 1,200 years old. So this is a huge age gap, by the way, because the heroine in this is a 23-year-old witch. And she's not immortal yet. So she's on her way to becoming immortal, but she's currently immortal. So it's a big age gap. And I really love this one because I found Bowen fascinating. He lost his mate hundreds of years ago, and so he's really just been living in misery without his mate. And so he actually goes into that competition from this previous book because he wants to win those keys to go back and save his mate. Things don't work out for him, and he ends up having run-ins with like the witch. So this one actually picks up a little bit during this high competition, but it doesn't sit with it too long, which is good because we already went through all that in the previous book, and that kind of got boring to me a little bit. And this one, it's definitely, I think I like this one the best so far. because this was a witch too, which I found the introduction to the witch is really interesting. And she is actually called Mariquetta the Awaited, because she has even more powers of like these 5 different type of powers. And so she's gonna be like one of the strongest, most powerful witches, but she doesn't know how to control her powers yet, and so she's kind of in transition on that. And her and Bowen meet. He fucks up a lot in this book, but I really loved it. It was just kind of all over the place, but he's confused because he's feeling like kind of like a mate thing with her, but his mate died. And so he's like, is my mate like reincarnated? Like, he doesn't know what's going on. But he's very drawn to her. And so they, it's kind of a mystery trying to figure out why is he feeling this mate bond with her when his mate died. But there's so much more to this. There's so much more of like the witch lore that was really interesting. I loved Mariquetta because she was such a strong character, but she had a lot of vulnerability because she is immortal. And he abandons her at one point in that high competition and leaves her like in a really bad situation where he has to go back to try and save her. And it was really bad because she's actually immortal. But, I just love their like dynamic. It was super spicy. I love the a lot more, I think. And I really liked the witch part of this. And I just liked their characters. There was a lot of big reveals near the end of this, and it was very exciting, action-packed. So I ended up listening to this one on audiobook too, and had a great time with it. So I'm really loving this series. I can't wait for the next one because it's going to have a ghost. So a ghost heroine. So I'm like, how is that going to work? But I'm loving this. I hope you guys watch the live show. I think I'm planning on doing it. Hold on, let me look at my calendar. I'm trying to remember what I'm doing it on. I plan on doing it on March 1st, I believe. And it should be kind of around the same time. I'm thinking around like 6 or 7 Eastern Standard Time. I'll be posting, I've got to schedule that, and I'll be posting that soon. But so excited to be reading these books, and I definitely recommend this last one. Again, I'm not giving the full rating, but I hope you will read those books, join our live show. Again, my Discord is linked down below if you want to join there to chat about the books or anything like that. Okay, so then I finally read No Limits by Emma Creed. This is actually second part of a duet on the couple. There's a series, but this is a duet of this one couple's story. And it was on my TBR forever, but I kept just being behind on my TBR and not getting to it. So I really wanted to finish it this month. So this is actually between Garrett and Maisie, and this really, the first book I enjoyed, but it felt very much a setup of a series, kind of introducing the characters. It wasn't too much romance. It leaves off on a cliffhanger, kind of like where Maisie ends up leaving and Garrett kind of pushes her away to leave the ranch. This gave me major Yellowstone vibes. So, like, Maisie ended up being, like, his stepsister, but they just became brother, stepsister. Her mother was, like, a gold digger and married their father, and she's kind of forced to live out on that ranch, and she falls for Garrett, and he's one of the older sons. And Garrett's very ruthless. He's kind of tired of his dad, like, easing up on things because they used to be a lot more ruthless, very Yellowstone style. They even have, like, the branding of the people in this. And so I really liked the setup. I thought it was very interesting. But honestly, I felt like these 2 books could have been 1 book and it would have been great. I don't think we needed to split it up into 2 books, but that's just me. That's one of my biggest complaints about some duets. I feel like they just are forcing it to be multiple books. But anyways, in this, Maisie has been kind of forced to leave, and they weren't able to even fully be together in that book. They kind of kissed or did some stuff, but not really a lot. So there wasn't a ton of romance in that. But she went away, and now it's a few years later. Her mom has died, and so she comes back for the funeral. And now Garrett is not going to let her go this time, and he's not going to ruin his chances. And, what I loved about this, it didn't draw that out at all. Like, they were pining after each other for years, wanting to be together. And so, like, they didn't, just keep pushing each other away and her fighting it and making him grovel. Like, literally, they come together pretty quickly in this, and I think they really had an amazing relationship. And that was what was good in this one, is we actually get to see them be together, have a great communication relationship. She really supports him, he supports her and is protective of her. And there's a lot of other elements in this, like dangerous elements of like her mom being murdered. His sister had killed herself way back, and she had been pregnant, and they wonder if she really killed herself. So there's all these like secret plots going on. His couple brothers are like, one of them is like in love with his best friend, but she's getting married to some other douchebag that like this family that we hate from this town, and he won't admit to her that he's loved her forever. And then the other one is like living on their competitor's ranch to be closer to her, and she's married to one of the guys, and he's having a secret affair with her. So there's a lot going on in this, and I think it's kind of setting up to the future books of like the brothers books. So I really liked this. I thought it was decent. I liked their relationship. It was sweet. It had some really good moments, but there was actually a really emotional and a trigger warning for a loss of like a side character that seemed pretty important, that I thought was going to be in like another one of the books with like the brothers. And so I may be spoiling that, but I just want to prepare you because I wasn't expecting that, and it hit pretty hard. So I still really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars and let me see here, 2.5 chilies. Okay, so now on to one that like I wasn't sure if I was gonna fully give this a 6 star, but it just won my heart over, and I just loved it so much where I'm buying this series immediately, because I loved the first one in the series, but this one I loved even more. And that is The Prince of Broadway by Joanna Shupe. This is the second book in the Uptown Girls. I just read the first book last month, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was fantastic. I love Joanna Shupe's writing. Like, I don't know what it is. She really sucks you in. This does feel a little bit more feminist, but like not banging it over your head. Like, because usually that kind of irritates me in historical romance. But in this, I didn't really mind it. It's like the Gilded Age kind of historical. And I really love the heroine in this one. So this one is between Clayton Madden and Florence. And Florence is the sister of the heroine from the first one. And she is really an independent, strong-willed, feisty girl. And she doesn't want to get married. She doesn't want to be set in an arranged marriage. She doesn't want that life. She wants to be independent and have her own life. She's really good at gambling and into that whole thing. So she actually wants to open her own casino for women, because women weren't allowed to come to these gambling dens, and yet they would kind of do their own card games at like different things. And it is illegal, but I mean, they do have gambling casinos and all that kind of stuff. And so in the previous book, I knew something was going to go on with her and the casino, the gambling den owner, Clayton. I just knew it. And so I was so excited for this one, because I just love a good historical romance with a self-made, scarred, kind of damaged hero that is like the gambling hall owner. Like, I just love it. I love it. And Clayton is definitely that. He's very alpha, very domineering. Like, he's very like amazing, but like the way he falls for her is just, I loved it. So in this, she's been going to his casino, and he's noticed, and he's like kind of let it go on, but he's like, bring her up here. I want to know what's going on with her, because she's showing up at his casino repeatedly. And really, she's been trying to catch his eye because she wants to open up her own casino. She wants to learn from him the business and all aspects of running casino. And so she offers money and so for him to give her lessons. And he's really intrigued by her, so he ends up agreeing to it. But he also has his own issues, because he has a long plan against revenge against her father. He hates her father. He ruined his family's life for reasons, and he wants revenge against him. But what I loved about this is he literally told her straight up that he hated her father, and he's going to have revenge against him. So he wasn't hiding that at all from her. But there is some stuff throughout this book that he does keep secret with his revenge plot that will affect her, and not in a good way. But he ends up offering to do this with her, and he also tells her straight up, like, I'm attracted to you and I would like to, have sex with you. And she's kind of like, whoa, really? And she's not like the virgin heroine. She's actually messed around a little bit. She's already had sex. So she's definitely interested. And they have this insane sexual chemistry. And so as she's coming to the casino, learning things, they just can't deny their connection. There is one scene where like the casino's getting raided and they have to sneak into like the next door business, which is like a courtesan's, brothel. And they go in this room that is basically like a room for like voyeurs or like, exhibitionist type of thing. So like they could open up this window and see this couple having sex that's into that. And he literally like tells her to get herself off in the room with him. And they're both doing that while watching the scene. And it was super fucking hot. I was not expecting that in historical romance. So I freaking loved it. But the thing that made this a 6-star for me was the hero and the heroine. Like, I really did love the heroine. I thought she was very strong, but she was vulnerable too. And she really like opened herself up to him. And they really had great communication. Even though there's some stuff he's hiding, he really was always brutally honest with her. And I mean, when he like fucks up after their first time having sex and he like goes to get her back, like he's so swoon worthy. He does like a really amazing thing for her birthday. He makes like a big gesture. Like, I just really loved him. Like, he was special. So I just loved this. I thought it was so spicy. I flew through it in a day. I listened to an audiobook. The audiobook was fantastic. It's available on AnyPlay if you're interested. But I fucking loved this. So I loved the first one. It was 5 stars. Very good read. But this one was just so much better. And I'm a sucker for the casino owner hero. I just am. And he was very swoon-worthy. So I just had to give this one 6 stars because of that alone. Like, I just loved it. So I highly recommend it. 3.5 chilies. It is spicy. Joanna Shupe does such a great job with her spice in historical romance too. So definitely recommend this one. Okay, and what's crazy is I had back-to-back 6 stars because I was listening to that on audiobook, and then I was also reading Sweet Prison by Neva Altaj. And this book is my favorite Neva Altaj book out of the Perfectly Imperfect series. This is the 10th book. The 10th book in the series, and they are still like, each book gets better and better and better. If you have not started that series, please pick it up. The first book was solid. I think I gave it like a 4-star. But each book got so much better. Her writing has improved so much. This one is a little bit longer than like the other ones were usually pretty short, quick reads. But I will say you need to read the 9th book. I think it's Darkest Sins first, because that book and this book are like kind of going on at the same time, and it's her this heroine's sister's romance, and there's a lot going on in it. So you really need to read those in order. The other ones, I believe you can just read as standalones if you want, but I definitely recommend you read 9 and 10 in order. But this is between Massimo and Zahara. And the thing with the Perfectly Imperfect series is they've all had like some kind of disability. This doesn't fully have like a disability, but Zahara does have a skin condition. I forget what it's called, and I don't think I would pronounce it right. But it's where you have like that patches of different colored skin where it's the different pigment, and she has that all over. So she does have a lot of insecurities, and she's been bullied, and she wears like full sleeves, and her skin's very sensitive. So like she couldn't even use certain cover up or make her have rashes and all this stuff. But anyway, so that's what's going on with the kind of like disability, but like the heroine is beautiful, and but it's tough for her. So in this, we have Massimo, and he actually is her stepbrother. Zahara was very young though, and he went to prison because he ended up killing a man that killed her stepbrother. The stepsisters were pretty young. They were younger than him, and the stepbrother, I think, was around the same age. And he ends up kind of shooting him very publicly, like right there in front of everybody. But he was told, you know, if he pled a certain way, he would have like a very minimum, you know, sentence. But the book gets basically thrown at him, which is very suspicious to him because the judge had ties to his mafia, the Cosa Nostra. So he was kind of shocked, and he knew somebody was like fucking with him, because his father was the head of the Cosa Nostra, and then you know, he was basically raised at a young age with like soldiers and doing all the kind of stuff, the grunt work. And he's very methodical, very intelligent. Like he would be the best Don. And he gets basically put away. So her father, which is his stepfather, ends up running it in his stead, but he's really telling him what to do. So he's running things from prison and all of that. And what ends up happening is Zahra was like really young when he went away, but she has a school assignment where she has to write a letter to a family member, and she ends up writing it to him, and it's kind of nothing, whatever. And he's kind of confused of like, why is she writing me? But she keeps writing him. And then eventually, like, she kind of, because she's telling him everything that goes on in her life and all this stuff, she gives him a little info about his father. Her father, who's running, you know, the Cosa Nostra for him. And it's stuff that he didn't tell him in like the most recent meeting. So he actually starts to kind of have her be his spy. And she does not get manipulated into this. She's pretty much like wants to help him, and she'll sneak into her dad's office and get documents and check on things. And she gives him all the information through letters. And it's very like they decode, like have a certain code they use so they can do that. But like he goes away, I believe he serves 18 years. So he's in there for a long time, and they write a lot of letters, and she starts to really fall for him through letters. And, you know, then when her father dies, which is part of like the previous book and this book, he's able to like go to the funeral. Obviously he's in cuffs and everything and taken there, but that's the first time he sees her. And now she's 18, and he's like kind of blown away by how beautiful she is. And he was picturing her in like her braids and stuff, and she's definitely all grown up, and they just had this amazing connection. And now her sister is gonna have to run the mafia for him. And so she really wants nothing to do with that, but she ends up having to do that for Massimo. And so the sister is still kind of spying for him and writing him letters through that. But after they see each other, they're like much more intimate with their letters. And it's just like they basically fall in love with each other without even being together. And then so when he gets out, he's going to finally take his rightful place, be the Don. But things are crazy. And now he also is going to have his stepsister live with him that he's basically in love with and very attracted to. And she's been pining after him. But then, oh my God, you guys, the angst in this, the slow burn. Like this was a slow burn. And what I loved about it was it had like historical romance feels. And what I mean by that is like the longing, like the slight touches. I highlighted the shit out of this book. Like the way they would like slightly touch or hold hands, or she would touch him because he had a bad temper and would act crazy, and she would just do a slight touch and she would ease him, and just like he would slightly touch her face. And it was just like, oh my God, like it was giving me everything, like all the longing between them, the angst. It was just giving me those vibes of just the slight hand holding or touching that you get in historical romance. We're getting that in a mafia romance. So I just fucking loved it. This book was so phenomenal. By the time they finally get together, you are like aching for it. And, you know, it is a slight taboo element because the stepsister thing, obviously they never even really grew up together like that. But the mafia is very old fashioned. And so he knows if he was with her, they would like really treat her badly. But what I loved about this was just the character growth, the angst, everything. Because she starts off so weak, even though she's doing a really powerful thing by spying for him. She really like has hidden herself and not like owned who she is and been okay with how she looks. And with her relationship with him and what he does for her, she just owns it by the end of this and is so strong. And they are just so good together. And then I loved it because Massimo was put in solitaire a lot and kind of went a little crazy where he was talking to himself. So now he has this voice in his head that he like talks with. So that was really great. I loved that in this. So I could go on and on. I will be talking about this more in another video later, so I will kind of hold off now. But I fucking loved this. It is my favorite Neva Altaj. It was a 6-star read, 3.5 chilies. I loved the slow burn, the inks. It was giving me everything. And I couldn't put this down. I loved every moment of it. So 6 stars. So I literally had 2 6 stars back to back. And I'm just so happy because January is kind of tough for me the end of the month. But anyways, those are all the books that I have this week. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video, give me a comment. I hope you join us for the live show and are trying to read these Immortals After Dark books with me because I am really enjoying them. All right, I will see you guys on the next one.